Week 7 is already here. That's the halfway point for the fantasy regular season. Can't believe we're already here. And we started off with a pretty good game at the end, I'd say, a Thursday night game. Brian, what were your overall impressions of this Thursday night game, the Jags at the Saints?
Alvin Kamara is a PPR machine. We definitely talked about that in our group chat as it was all happening. I don't know, even Olave actually, he still had 13 targets or something like that. Carr just looked like trash for basically everything except for one drive. So I don't know. It's not like you're doing anything besides starting Chris Olave. So, but I don't know, man. Both those offenses look a little shaky for sure. ETN is killing it, obviously, but I don't know how many times you can count on a guy to get 2 touchdowns and 9 carries. I don't think he ended with 9 carries, but
he's been killing it.
Yeah. And honestly, I think how good ETN is in and around the goal line, that might be limiting Trevor Lawrence's upside. I saw his stats going into this game, and it was 1,500 yards and 7 touchdowns, I think, with 3 interceptions. And so it's around a 4,300 yard pace or something. But, only about 20 touchdowns. And it's that's not elite necessarily. Definitely startable, but I don't know.
I'm starting to get worried about, I don't know. I asked Dad in the recap video of week 6, who would you take in Dynasty, Stroud or Lawrence? And he still said Lawrence. And that's fine, but I think it's very close.
It's getting a lot closer for sure.
I mean, yeah, we've seen Stroud basically Lawrence's best. And I've mentioned this many times. He's had about a 5-week stretch, and that's kind of the basis in which we based everything off of his projections this year was on that 5-game stretch where he looked really good. That's kind of all he's had now in 2.5 years, essentially, 2.5 seasons. I don't know. I'm starting to get worried about it. He has this year 2 games of 250 yards or more, 2 games of 2 touchdowns, and that's it. He hasn't thrown for 3 touchdowns yet. He's thrown for 300 yards once. He's not really turning the ball over. 3 interceptions, unless I don't think he had one tonight. No, he didn't. He did run a little bit, which really helps his value. 8 for 59. That really kind of inflates his numbers a little bit. If he does it consistently, that's fine. But I don't know. It's worrisome. I don't know if it's the offense, if it's him. What about Tua? Would you take Tua over Lawrence in Dynasty? I think I would at this point.
Yeah, I'd say so. I don't see any reason not to. I think we've all kind of gotten over the medical concerns for Tua, which we were told isn't a big deal. It's not like he's concussion prone or anything. That's not necessarily a thing. He had some bad luck with that last year, and we all kind of held it against him. But look at the offense that he's working with and everything, and it's just it would be hard to you can even just think about it in a straight up redraft sense, it's who would you rather have, because I think that's kind of telling. Would you even rather have Stroud over Lawrence in redraft? That's got to be close, I think I'd rather have Stroud.
Yeah, at this point, I don't know what it is. And at some point, it has to point to Lawrence. I know and again, I kind of mentioned it. We do like to make excuses. It seems for some players, we like to make these excuses. And I think Urban Meyer was his coach's rookie year, and I don't know, just certain excuses. But at some point, it's just
drop touchdowns in a few games early on, and
it's Thursday night or it's against the Saints, and
I am glad that running around a little more for sure. Like you mentioned that, and like, I mean, he's got 147. No, that doesn't even include tonight, I don't think, that I'm looking at. So, I mean, he's got to be on like a 400-ish yard pace, Trevor Lawrence, rushing yards. So that definitely helps for sure.
Yeah, it helps, but it doesn't, like, you still have to throw for a lot if you're only going to rush for that much, like you still have to throw for a decent amount. Like he hasn't had, this was his first 20-point game, I believe. I guess the 4-point per passing touchdown, he hasn't even had a 20-point game yet. I don't know. It's a little concerning. And then the Ridley 1 catch for 5 yards, like,
yeah,
man.
I know we were so excited about him after that first game. It was like, oh man, like Ridley is the dude. Like, and it's like, yeah, I guess we should have tempered expectations. It's hard not to get excited about stuff like that, for sure. But I mean, the offense is obviously working just fine without Ridley being like the alpha kind of a thing, like with ETN and Kirk and Ingram, like getting it done to whatever degree. So, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it's looking good, the offense. I don't know if it's like looking great. I know the numbers kind of look good, but I mean, I don't know. I know we're spending a lot of time on this, but we have 3 games of less than 24 points, like out of 3 out of 7 now. Like, and today he had a defensive touchdown. So, offensively, that's 4 games under 24 points. It's not great. 4 out of 7, you'd like to see more, but we'll see. We'll see it's going.
He's definitely playing close to like streaming quarterback numbers, and I don't think you're necessarily dropping Lawrence to like play the matchups, but you might be rostering 2 quarterbacks with him, especially if that other guy is Stroud or Stafford,
No. Or Sam Howell. Like, I don't know. Like, you see Sam Howell throw, he's thrown for over 250 yards like 4 times, I think, this year, or 3 times. I don't know. It's just, it's a little strange. Just haven't seen it yet with Lawrence. So a little concerned there, but we'll here to preview some of the games in week 7. And it's kind of an interesting week. It's a heavy bye week. And the NFL kind of started this new, I think within just the last year or 2 of just like, they put 6. It used to always be either 2 teams or 4 teams on bye. And now they have these 6 teams on bye weeks. And that's one of them this week. And then the next week we have no teams on bye. I'm not sure why they do that. I'm sure it has something to do with like international games, or there has to be a reason for it. But so yeah, only 12 games to cover, 4 in this video. And because of all the buys, there's not a whole lot of like, there's a lot of guys you're just going to be starting kind of because you have to, like, or either your team's beat up, which a lot of teams are, in combination with these bye weeks, like, like there's leagues in our main league, and like I have to start fucking Elijah Moore and Josh Reynolds because it's like 12-team league, deep bench it, deep rosters, like just kind of how it is, how it goes. So, but we're gonna start off with a lot of bad over-unders too, like really bad. In this first video, we're gonna talk about all 4 games are under 40.5, which is really bad. Bucks at Falcons at the first one, over under 37. Bucks are favored by 2.5. I don't know if there's a whole lot of questions here besides Chris Godwin. Like, well, I mean, I guess, are you worried about Mike Evans? Is that someone you're worried about at all? I mean, obviously this week not so much, but in the future, now we've had 2 back-to-back games of less than 50 yards, 3 in a row of less than 60 or 60 or less. Are you starting to worry about Mike Evans a little bit, or
not really? Because I think he's commanding a little bit more target share than what we're used to. It's not turning into what we'd like to see, but I think it's like he's definitely still. I'd still give him another shot. I'm actually a little bit more worried about Godwin, who, like, he's not seeing that target share that we're used to, even though they are throwing enough to like support these two guys. But yeah, that offense is it's definitely worrisome, but I feel like both those guys are kind of like, number 3 receivers at this point. Like, I don't think you're benching them.
Yeah. No, I kind of agree. I mean, especially this week, I think you can make a case to not start Godwin. I know he's had 2 good weeks back to back, but one of those came with Mike Evans not there. And then, last week it was 6 for 77. It wasn't like it was this amazing game or something. Still hasn't caught a touchdown, but this week it's kind of easy to start him, like, and kind of out of necessity, with the teams that are on bye. So, what about Rachaad White? What are we doing with Rachaad White? Because he's the guy that I want to get off of,
Yeah, definitely. If you can trade him, like,
I think you can. I think people are too smart.
I really definitely right now is not the time either, for sure. But yeah, I don't know. It's kind of hard to get away from the opportunity that he's getting, just given like there's not a lot of guys out there getting 70% snap share and that are involved in the passing game. It's not turning into production though. So yeah, it's a tough one. Like I look at him kind of similar like to Najee Harris, but I'd say the Bucs offense is slightly better than Pittsburgh. I don't even know if that's actually true, but I like to think that it's true. I mean, given the shirt and everything, but I don't know. It's tough, man. I don't know who you're benching him for. Let's see, where does Fantasy Pros actually have him ranked? He's got to be around 25th or something, or
he's 19th.
Okay.
Again, it's just like the nature of, like, just think about everyone who's on bye and everyone that got hurt and stuff.
It makes sense. I mean, the guys right around him, right? It's Madison and Javonte Williams, and Najee Harris is a couple of spots below him. It's kind of like, yeah, I think he's kind of like in that proper spot, like, and you go down a little bit more, just a couple more spots, and it's like Zach Moss, Jalen Warren, Kareem Hunt, and it's like, it's kind of sad to see, the RB1 on a team, and he's kind of like, he's barely like passing muster over, he's kind of like these backup, or the RB2s on their teams anyways. I would want to call them backups, because they're all involved in a different way. So
yeah, it's just one of those where it's not, I don't know, he's not really doing much for me. I mean, like, Jaleel McLaughlin's outscored him. I know Rachaad White had a bye, so I think average-wise he hasn't, but they're like a point difference, like, it's just tough. Again, it's hard to get off of him this week. He does have a bad matchup. The Falcons are the third best against fantasy running backs, only giving up an average of 13 points a game. So that's something to kind of keep an eye on, and that's half PPR, by the way. All these rankings. So I don't know. We'll just name you. Kind of named a few, like Jahmyr Gibbs or Rachaad White. Who would you start?
I mean, given with the Montgomery injury, especially, like I'd go Gibbs.
Rachaad White. We talked about Najee Harris.
Yeah, I don't know, man. that's a coin flip. Who's Pitt playing this week?
Rams.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. If you have both those guys, like, man, you are in trouble.
Yeah.
Given where you probably drafted those two, it's probably rounds 3 and round 4 or something like that. So yeah, that's a tough one. I don't even know if I can really pick a favorite there. I mean, I'd probably go Rachaad White. just because of the Jalen Warren taking over a lot of the passing downs and stuff from Najee. So
Yeah. Yeah, that is a tough one. I guess I'd lean Rashad White as well, but it's not doesn't feel great, that's for sure.
I'd start Rashad White over Javonte Williams, who's ahead of him, and probably Alexander Madison too, given the matchup with San Francisco. But I'm just looking at the couple of guys ranked above him.
Yeah, I'd still go Madison. I think we're a little skewed about 49ers. Like, oh my God, they're so tough. Not so much this year. Like, they're 21st, so they're in the top 12, but that's not enough to scare me away from it. They're giving up almost 16 points a game. Like the Falcons are technically a better team against the run, as of now for fantasy. So,
yeah. And I was just looking at some of the Falcons' previous matchups. I guess we can kind of jump over to them, but they played ETN, they played David Montgomery and stuff. And so it's not like they've played a bunch of trash players as far as running backs go. So
yeah,
good on them.
Yeah. So in the Falcons side, I don't really think there are any questions with the Falcons. Really, you're obviously starting Bijan, who I kind of talked about it. Like, is he been a disappointment? Are you disappointed if you drafted Bijan probably top 5 or is the RB 2 or 3 in fantasy? Like, I'd say you're kind of disappointed. Like, I'm not saying he's bad. He's RB 10 on the year, but we've seen 3 games above 15. No 20-point games yet. Back to back, less than 12 points. Are you kind of disappointed with what you got from Bijan at this point? Like, I kind of wanted a little bit more. I mean, it's not his fault, obviously.
Yeah, probably. But I look at some of the guys that are ranked above him just on the week, and I'm sure this actually holds like water through the season. It's like, I don't think anyone was really thinking like DeAndre Swift or ETN or, especially Mostert, where it's like, oh, those guys were going to be better than him, and it's like, it's a product of the offense for sure. You're definitely not happy where you took him. So, yeah, I'd say disappointed, but I guess that's kind of us getting a little too excited about a Falcons running back, which is weird because they're so run heavy, it's just so counterintuitive. And he's like so involved in like the passing game too. So it's like, I don't know. I think with him, it's, you just hope that, is their coach, Arthur Smith? Is that who it is?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, I hope he just like pulls his head out of his ass. And it's like, the dude's still getting double-digit carries and, 5+ targets a game. So it's like, I don't know, just the offense is just disappointing to say the least.
Yeah, and they're still giving Algier too many carries. So,
yeah,
which is unfortunate. But yeah, I don't really think there's any questions with this team now at this point. Like, I think London is, to me, you're throwing him in there, especially this week. Like, I don't know if there's too many questions about it. Like, they're throwing the ball more. He's had, 2 good weeks back to back. He has a huge, 9 targets, 12 targets. The targets have never really been a problem in terms of the percentage. Like, I don't know. I think this is a fine matchup. Like, they could have to throw the ball some more. So I don't know if you have any questions or
no
guys.
Yeah, sorry. It's kind of funny. I leave for like 1 week and all of a sudden we don't have Kyle Pitts questions anymore. It's kind of like, yeah, he's still a tight end and he's still playing like half the snaps and stuff. But, coming off a couple of decent enough games, it's like, I don't know. You're not streaming a guy over him or anything like that, but it's just kind of like, it's kind of the nature of tight end. So, yeah, I agree. I don't think there's a whole lot to talk about here. Definitely not starting Desmond Ridder, and you're not flexing Algier. So,
yeah, there are no more questions about, at least as of now. He's tight end 12. That's all it takes. his 2 like good weeks, not like amazing weeks. So, yeah, I really don't think there's too many. I mean, I guess we can talk a little bit more about London if we want to, but I really don't think, especially in 3 wide receiver leagues, like there's really much of a question here. Just because, like, he's more reliable than like Calvin Ridley at this point. Like you're going to get 25% of whatever the pass is thrown that Desmond Ridder throws. Like, and I can't say
what
that
about,
for. Go ahead.
I was going to say, what about Van Jefferson going there? That might be a problem,
No. No, I think that's more about their other receivers than anything else. It was kind of a weird one. But yeah, I mean, like week 1, we were all worried because Ridder threw the ball 18 times, but he's thrown the ball over 30 times and over 35, over 30 times every week since week 1 and over 35 times 3 of those 5 weeks. So I don't think we're really worried. Like I guess they want to throw it with Ridder. I don't know. So yeah, I think we can kind of move on from those guys and actually get into the next game, the Bears at the Raiders. Over under 37.5. Like, it's really bad this week, guys. Like, and we were talking about it last week I know you weren't here on that video, but we're just like, man, there's a lot, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, I don't remember, but just like, man, there's a lot of like low over unders, and it's like, what's going on? And I think like, I thought I heard like 60% or 65% of the games have hit the under or something. Like, it's kind of weird. And that reflects in the quarterback scoring. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, we kind of talked about that before we jumped on, where it's like scoring's definitely down. A lot of people are talking about it and everything, and it's kind of like, yeah, like it's kind of the nature of the beast. It's affecting the quarterbacks for sure. I mean, it's affecting everyone really, but yeah,
definitely. But on the Bears side, they are starting the rookie quarterback. I always forget if it's Bagent or Bagent or I think it's Bagent. So, obviously, I think it's interesting always saying like rookies, and he's one of those that looked really good, Tyson Bagent, that looked good in preseason, but also we've seen a lot of guys look good in preseason and it just hasn't translated over, like Dorian Thompson-Robinson, DTR from Cleveland. It's like, oh, this guy looks great, and then he plays an actual game. It's like, oh yeah, he's not ready.
Against actual starters, and it goes away pretty quick, right? Like, I think.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think the Chicago side of the ball is like pretty easy, right? Like you're starting DJ Moore and Kmet, and I think the questions really come around running back, I guess.
Well, kind of. I mean, Roshan hasn't practiced yet. There was rumors about potential IR, so it sounds like it's a serious concussion, which kind of sucks because, like, especially for like people like me who's like, a lot of my team's heavily invested in Roshan. I like his talent, and it kind of lined up like, all right, Khalil Herbert got hurt, going on IR, but then Roshan got hurt in the same game, and potentially he's going to miss the same amount of time. So I would start Deontay Foreman. Like, okay, yes, you're starting DJ Moore, like, unless you're just stacked and you can get off of him because of the rookie quarterback, but he was still targeting him a lot, and this week you're going to have to start him. But yeah, like Deontay Foreman, in my opinion, I think I'm starting him if there's no Roshan. I know he didn't have the greatest game, but he still had 16, 17 carries. It didn't turn into a whole lot. I think like 60 yards or something like that. But, he plays the Raiders this week, which is a whole different matchup, like a much better matchup than what he had before. And just double checking the Raiders. They're like almost in the bottom. They're in the bottom third of, for the best matchups for running backs to go up against. So good matchup. I think if he's there, especially the rookie quarterback, they're going to give him 15, 17 carries. And if he busts off a big one or gets a touchdown, you're going to be happy, Like that's kind of how I see it. I don't know if you have a disagreement there, especially this week, like with Deontay Foreman.
No, definitely not. I didn't realize Roshan still wasn't practicing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like Foreman, like you definitely, especially if there's no Roshan, like you have to throw him out there, and even with like, I mean, if Roshan's upgraded to like full, like if he clears the protocol and everything, it's like I think that definitely muddies the water. I'm not saying you get to start him
Mm-hmm.
over Foreman, like because like you said, like with the rookie quarterback and everything, it's like they might rely on the ground game a little more to try and establish that. Justin Fields obviously isn't there, so that's not like the threat of the running quarterback is definitely downgraded mostly, if not taken away fully. So yeah, no, I think Foreman's he's a must start as a number 2
I'd start him
running back.
over. I'd start him over Rashad White if he was out. Roshan.
Yeah, I don't know if I go quite that far, just because the lack of the passing game involvement. But I mean, I'm definitely not going to argue with it. Like the juicy matchup and everything, and if he's got the backfield to himself, I don't mind it.
Yeah. I mean, he didn't play. I know Darrington Evans was playing a decent amount as well in that game. It's like a pass catching back. Like Deontay played 60% of the snaps. So it wasn't like a 90% whatever. But if they're going to run the ball, they're going to run it with him. So, I mean, yeah, if Roshan is there, it does muddy the waters. I'd probably want to avoid the situation if possible, just because I don't know what their roles are going to be. If I had to choose one, I'd probably lean Roshan just because he can catch the ball. So that's kind of where I'm at there. But yeah, if it is no Roshan, like I'd start him over Gus Edwards. I'd start him over, Kareem Hunt, Jalen Warren, all these guys that are ranked ahead of him. Zach Moss. I'd probably still keep rolling out Zach Moss. Zach Evans, like I'm a little afraid of that situation. I know we'll get there, but yeah, I think definitely. What about Komet? Like, are we shying away from him because of the rookie quarterback?
No, I mean, I don't think you can get away from him, just how much he plays and everything, and he given the position. So, I mean, maybe he's going to be the safety valve for this rookie guy. So I don't see how you're really getting away from. I wouldn't call him a must start. It's like, but I think at this point, I don't know if you're really rostering 2 tight ends or streaming a tight end to play over Komet, because I don't know if that's really worth it. Use your roster spot for another running back, because they're dropping like flies, and the next guy up might beat the waiver wire with them. So yeah,
that's fair. On the Raiders side, I think the Raiders are always a pretty easy team. Like,
yeah, fuck the Raiders.
I know Adams has not been good lately, but I'm still starting him. Jacoby Myers is a must start. I think he's had double-digit targets in the 3 games with Jimmy Garoppolo. And it's either Garoppolo or I think I read it was either Garoppolo or Aiden O'Connell is who they're going to go with, which I don't really understand because they went with Hoyer last week. I don't know. I don't really understand.
I don't know if O'Connell was actually No, he was actually inactive last week. So
yeah, but I mean, they made that choice because Hoyer did Garoppolo get hurt during the game.
Yeah, Jimmy started the game. Yeah, so I know it's still kind of weird to not have him as your third guy, but yeah, that was. I don't know if that's good or bad for. I mean, I'd say it's bad for O'Connell that they didn't even have him active.
But I read they're going to start him this week if Garoppolo's not going to play.
Yeah, and that's what they did in week 4 too, right? Like they didn't start Hoyer. They went with O'Connell because, I mean, they've got to be looking towards the future a little bit. So why not give the rookie some reps, Yeah, I don't know. We don't need to talk about the quarterbacks really, so.
Yeah, and to answer, I know you asked a few weeks ago about the third quarterback emergency. So what it is, yeah, you can have a third guy who doesn't count towards like the 52 or 53 man roster.
But he can
But
dress.
yeah, but you can only play if the other two quarterbacks get hurt.
Yeah.
You can't just like bench them. You can't bench Garoppolo and put in the third guy. You have to. They actually have to get hurt. So, but yeah, I mean, it doesn't really matter on the quarterback side. Like you're starting Adams and Myers. Like you just kind of have to at this point. And Jacobs. Like what? I guess Michael Mayer's an interesting one because rookie tight end. He had the highest snap percentage that he's had. It's been going up each of the last few weeks. Was really involved. Looked really good. 5 for 75. I probably want to avoid starting him, but I definitely was looking to pick him up and stuff I would have dropped him for like if I had Logan Thomas, I would have dropped Logan Thomas and pick up Michael Mayer just because it's tight end and you gotta roll with like the ebbs and flows a little bit like with tight ends or else you're always just going to be chasing it. But I do think like rookie tight end, they want to get him involved. They started getting him involved and he looked good. So I don't know how you feel about Michael Mayer.
Definitely not a guy I want to start because I feel like you kind of would be chasing it at that point. But if you're rostering two, he's not a bad he's not a bad guy to have as your number two, just to see what happens. He gets one more good game and then he's basically, well, you might as well stream him, like throw him in there, and he doesn't really have to do a whole lot as a tight end, obviously. And I mean, he was pretty highly graded as a rookie too, like coming in, and it's easy to forget, like we're only 6 games in for most of these guys and 5 for some. So it's kind of like, don't judge too harshly, but yeah, he was out there and he looked good last week. So I think he's a good stash.
Yeah. On to the next game. I thought we were on another half of the game, but on to the next game. The Colts at the Browns over under 40.5, the highest one of this video. Browns are favored by 3. We'll start with the Colts. Gardner Minshew as the quarterback. We'll start with the running back situation. What are you personally doing if you have Zach Moss, if you have Jonathan Taylor? Obviously, let's just say you have one-on-one team. Are you just starting both and hoping that Jonathan Taylor starts to take over, or just basically you can't bench Moss until you see it not happening?
Yeah, that's basically where I'm at. Like, I feel like you have to start both of them. Jonathan Taylor, because of the pedigree in general. Like we still haven't seen a big game from him, but they paid the guy not to not play him for sure. They're kind of working him back. And like you said about Moss, like until we don't see it, he did get lucky, kind of saved his bacon a little in half PPR last week with the touchdown. Mm-hmm. But I mean, he's still involved in the passing game. I mean, he was involved a little more last week than he was before, which is kind of funny. And Taylor actually had a decent amount of work there too. So I think given the nature of the team, I think they're going to be throwing a little more, and it seems like both guys are involved. So I'd say start them both. If I had both of them, it'd be tough. I would lean Taylor if I had both of them and I was trying to decide between one of them. But if I had either one, I'm throwing the guy out there for sure.
Yeah. So Zach Moss or Rachaad White?
I'll lean White there, just because the more guaranteed volume, I would say.
Yeah, they are playing Cleveland. The Colts are probably the best defense in the NFL. They are. You look at their ranks against, they're second, third best against quarterbacks, 6th best against running backs, the best against receivers, 5th best against tight ends. Like, this team is legit. Their defense. Something to keep an eye on. Hard to run on for sure.
Just very complete defense for sure. Like you just said.
Yeah. They shut down one of the better offenses last week in the 49ers. I know they had a couple injuries and stuff, but still.
Yeah, they were battling them before the injuries though too. Like, I know you're not trying to take anything away from what they've done, but yeah, like they're looking really good, and that's definitely the strength of that team right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with Jonathan Taylor. I mean, we're seeing, and they mentioned it, like he played nothing, no preseason, no practices, nothing. Like, so they wanted to ease him in, but he went from 15% of the snaps to 42%. So you imagine that's only going to go up, like at least to 50. And I'll take 50% of the snaps of Jonathan Taylor over most running backs, so I think he's kind of a must start. I think the bigger question is Zach. So Zach Moss or the Steelers guys, Najee and Jalen Warren.
I'd go Najee, Moss, Warren.
I think I'd go Moss for them. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. Especially seeing if Gardner Minshew is going to keep dumping the ball off like that, like,
yeah,
what was that? 11 catches for the two running backs.
Yeah, on what, 13 targets too. So it's like that's a pretty good chunk right there, And we've seen Gardner do it before,
Yeah, no, it's a good. I think again this week you're probably starting Zach Moss, but I'd start him over the Steelers guys. I'd start him over like other guys that are kind of in a timeshare, like a Kareem Hunt, Julio McLaughlin. I'd start him over like Gus Edwards, Zach Evans. I don't know. I don't know if you're there with me, but
yeah, I think I was gonna say maybe not on Zach Evans, but honestly, we don't know what that backfield's gonna look like. So yeah, I'm with you.
Could be Amari DiMercato all over again, like just you kind of get screwed over. Pittman and obvious start. He could have a bad game, but I'm just not getting away from Michael Pittman. Josh Downs is another intriguing guy. I think we can talk about a little bit. Like, I think if it were PPR, like I'd lean Josh Downs over like a KJ Osborne or even maybe a Josh Palmer. Half PPR, I'll probably lean those guys. Where are you at with Josh Downs? Like, I think he's a fun player. Like he's done really well with Gardner Minshew at the helm. I think he's had back-to-back double-digit point weeks, basically in Gardner Minshew's 2 full starts. So, where are you at with him? Like, would you start him over? We're talking half PPR. Like, would you start him over Deontay Johnson coming back from the injury, or Romeo Doubs, or
definitely not Deontay. Like he's logged back-to-back full practices and stuff, and we see what he worked, like how he works the field and everything. Like I think he's going to command more. I definitely think you can throw Downs into your lineup. You have to temper expectations. Like you don't necessarily want to be chasing the target share and everything like that, but we've seen him look like decent for sure as far as like commanding some targets. Like Gardner seems to like to go to him, and I mean the touchdown last week, I mean that's kind of the hard part, right? Like he got barely over 10 and a half points last week with a touchdown, so it's not going to be pretty. I definitely would have him stashed if possible and wait to see it for another game.
Yeah, that's fair. I think he's definitely more valuable in like PPR. On the Brown side, like Deshaun Watson, I think had a full practice today. Where are you at with Deshaun Watson? Do you want to kind of, because you have to have a backup at this point if you still have him on the roster? Like,
oh yeah.
Are you just you want to wait and see a game on him and not take the risk? Is how you're approaching it, or like if you have a Sam Howell or Jordan Love? Or...
I would definitely want to start streamers over him. I would start Love and Howell over him. I really want to see a game from him where he doesn't look like terrible. I know we kind of talked about him after in like the week 4 preview, I think, where it was like, oh, like, you know, he's had a couple of 20-ish or, you know, 20 plus point games and stuff. But I just think that you got to kind of wait and see. Like, where is he? Oh yeah, he's all the way down here at 21. I wouldn't start Ritter or Pickett over him. I'm just kind of moving up the list. I wouldn't have started Carr or Josh Dobbs over him. Actually, you know what? Maybe I would start Josh Dobbs and Baker, Kirk Cousins. Yeah, I think he's kind of right where he needs to be. But
I'd start him over Baker and probably Dobbs.
I think those two are like the most, like, he's like right in there with those two. I think like everyone else above him, you're starting over him for sure.
Not Kenny Pickett or Ritter. I wouldn't start those guys.
No. Well, I wasn't counting those two. Like, those are the two that are. Yeah,
basically
I was
like
saying,
15 and above.
Yeah,
start. Yeah, which is Kirk Cousins and I'd probably go Watson over Mayfield and Dobbs. Just again, more upside, but it is a shorter injury, so that's always scary. In the running backs, like, I like Jerome Ford this week. I think it's a good matchup. You know, he's still getting the usage, and I think he's going to continue to kind of get the usage. Like, he's not going to be a 90% guy. That's just not how the Browns operate. Even with Nick Chubb, they never did that. So, or even like a 75% guy. He's going to be a 60, 50% type of snap share guy, but he's still going to get catches. He's still going to get, you know, probably double-digit carries if the game script's right. You know, I know he didn't have a catch last week, but, you know, he's had at least 2 in 4 straight games before that. No, he did have a catch he had 2 catches last week. So, he's going to get a couple catches. So I like Ford this week. I don't think there's really any questions with him. Kareem Hunt, though, I mean, he had a good week because he scored a touchdown. You know, he had some catches and stuff like that. You know, they wanted to get his legs under him a little bit. They came off the bye, and, you know, they increased his snap share up to 37%. Would you take, let's just say, a 40% snap share Kareem Hunt over the Steelers guys?
Definitely over Warren, not over Najee though. And when when I say definitely over Warren, I'm not even that confident about that, honestly. I mean, if I really think too hard about it, like, I might start Warren over him. Like, I still want to see a little more, like, especially, you know, I want to see something a little bit more from Hunt. Like, we know what kind of player he can be. He obviously knows the offense and everything. He has pass catching abilities for sure, but I just want to see it a little bit more from him. Like, I'm not ready to just he's definitely not an auto start, like, low end RB2. Like, I think given the week, I think you're starting him as a flex probably, you know, like, just given the nature of everything, or, like, you know, he could be your RB2, like, in a pinch given the buys and the injuries, but I'm not excited about it.
It's interesting though, because he's had a better week than either Warren or Najee have had all year, you know?
Yeah.
And he came off the street in week 3, you know, like, and he had a bye already. So it's like, it's interesting, you know, like, I think I might lean just Kareem Hunt, just especially because the matchup. I think they're going to be in control of this game and be able to potentially run the ball a lot if Watson's still coming back from an injury. So I might lead Hunt. What about like Hunt versus Zach Moss? And both of them could be getting 40% of the snaps. Who do you want? Like, way worse matchup for Zach Moss against, you know, same game against Cleveland.
Yeah. I agree with what you just said, but I also agree with what you said earlier about, like, until I don't see it from Zach Moss, like, I'm still starting him, and, like, I'll start him over guys like Kareem Hunt for sure.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic though, because it's like they both could get the exact same amount of snap percentages, and one has a way better matchup, you know, than the other one. I would definitely be starting him over Zach Evans. Again, I'm not convinced like Zach Evans is necessarily going to get. He definitely could. I don't know. Like, I don't know if he's going to get everything
Yeah, I
there.
agree.
Yeah. And then, Amari Cooper, you're starting. Njoku, you're not. Elijah Moore, you're not, unless you're me and half your team's injured or something, So, um, yeah. So we'll move on from that game into our last game, the Giants and the Commanders. Yeah. So we got the over under of 37.5. Commanders are favored by 2.5. Yeah. I'm not going to start Daniel Jones, even if he plays. Saquon, you're starting. The receivers, it's really only Wandale for me is like that's in question. Like
Yeah,
this week, you could probably he's not a bad play, especially in PPR. Especially this week. Like if you desperately need it, like yeah, you should be in a situation where you kind of know. Like I'm gonna start most of the guys that are ranked ahead of him. I don't know. I'd probably start Wandale over like a Rashee Rice who's ranked ahead of him. Just because, like, I think I know I can know what to expect from Wandale a little bit more. He's kind of right where he should be, though, in my opinion. Like on this rankings, like right behind guys like DJ Osborne and Josh Downs, ahead of Shaheed. Kendrick Bourne's an interesting one to talk about. Tutu Atwell, Josh Reynolds, Elijah Moore. So I don't know how you feeling about Wandale, who's had 8 targets, 8 catches last week.
Yeah, no, I don't want to start any Giants receiver. Like, I don't know. Like, I mean, their offense looks just so lethargic in general. Yeah, like I'm avoiding at all costs. Like, I think he's definitely a guy you want to keep on the bench and maybe see what happens for one more week. Especially, I don't even know like what the split was with Daniel Jones versus who came in the game for him after. Was it Tyrod Taylor? Yeah. So I don't know if that really matters too much. Like, I mean, the offense obviously runs through Saquon and Waller, and those are the only two I'm even remotely interested in, and I'm even tempering expectations with them.
So, I mean, does it make it more appealing to you that like Washington is like maybe the worst up there with like Denver and Chicago? They're third worst against quarterbacks. They're 19th against running backs, but basically the passing game is they're third worst against quarterbacks and receivers. Does that change it for you? Like if you compare him to a guy like Josh Palmer, right? They both had 7, 8 targets. And the last couple of weeks, which is what they both have had, right? Well, I don't know what Wandale, if he had, I know he had 8 targets last week, but he gets his 8 targets, like it's probably going to turn into 70 yards or something like that, 70, 80 yards, the chance at a touchdown. Like what's the difference between those two? Whereas the Chargers are playing, a much tougher matchup in the Chiefs.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, I think that's the biggest. I mean, we're talking about Justin Herbert throwing the ball to Palmer versus, Daniel Jones or Tyrod Taylor. I think that's like kind of like the big thing. And given the matchup, like I get Kansas City's defense has been pretty good so far. But I mean, how do you beat Kansas City? It's like you better score some points. So I don't even think it's like close.
Teams haven't really been scoring points, like
I know.
Again, you look at their top 5 and basically against every position across fantasy, like
they're really so good. Weird. They're so weird. The Chiefs are so weird this year. I don't get it. It could be like you said on a previous video. It's like the narrative I have in my head where it's like, well, that's what you have to do against them, and they're kind of flipping it a little bit for sure.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, it's interesting because it's like, yeah, Justin Herbert's throwing the ball, but it's like Wandale had a better game last week. Like
yeah,
it's just one of those things. It's slightly better, and it wasn't. It was 8 for 62 versus like 4 for 60. And I know Palmer had a couple called back and stuff like that. Like, I don't know. We've
Yeah.
seen 3 games now of no Mike Williams, and Josh Palmer's getting 7 targets and 4 or 5 catches and 60 to 70 yards. Like that's what he's getting,
Yeah.
So,
And there was one of those that was called back. It wasn't he got a touchdown called back, wasn't it? And wasn't it kind of a big one too?
I forget the length, but yeah, he had a couple, maybe 40 more yards or something, like taken away from him.
And now you don't get any fantasy points for what could have happened, kind of a thing. So, but I don't know. I just feel like I feel much more comfortable with Palmer.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I guess if you're banking on like who has a better touchdown opportunity, I mean, I would definitely start him over like. What about Rashee Rice? Would you still? Because there's people going to be talking about these decisions. Like, do I start Rashee Rice or Wandale?
Yeah, again, it's funny because it's like I've got the narrative in my head where it's like, oh, he plays with, he's got Patrick Mahomes throwing him the ball, so it's like it's got to be Rice, But we're talking about a guy who only plays, I don't know, has he broken 50% of snaps yet? Rice, so. That is like, I don't know, man. Like he definitely seems to command targets like when he's on the field, but he's obviously not commanding playing time necessarily, and that's worrisome. So I'd still lean Rice there, though.
Yeah, it's funny, though, because, again, you look at it, and Wandale, who's had the best fantasy game, it's Wandale. Like, he's had, in PPR at least, maybe not half PPR, but he's had a 14-point game, and Rice hasn't. So it's just funny, like, I don't know. I think especially if you need safe points, like.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I'm not excited about starting any of these guys, except for honestly, Josh Palmer. I'm more excited about him.
I think there's some value in like. I kind of know what I know what I'm going to get with Wandale, of like, and I don't necessarily know with like Rice and Palmer, but that game could also be a shootout. So. But yeah, there's definitely no one else. I mean, Waller, you're going to start because it's a tight end. So the Commander side, like Sam Howell, I think is a good start this week. Just a good matchup. And so if you need a bye week replacement, he's definitely a guy I would be targeting. Probably Brian Robinson. Yeah, like he has to be. I know he's fallen off from where he started. I'm pretty sure. He started as like a top 5 guy, and he's he's still running back 13. He had almost 13 points last week. So yeah, he's definitely a must start. I think McLaurin, you gotta probably keep throwing out there this week at least. I don't know where you at with McLaurin. Like he's a top 36 receiver on the year with all the bye weeks and injuries. Like I would assume you're throwing him out there against the Giants.
Yeah, definitely. Like he's still getting the targets and everything like that. So not like crazy numbers. Like it's not a very concentrated like pass attack there. So you're gonna be. He's definitely gonna be kind of a more or less like what he's always been, where it's like like what you can get from him, but he will lay an egg for you every now and then. So I don't know. Yeah. Like I don't see how you're not starting McLaurin.
Yeah. Dotson, it's the ship has sailed there. Like just not using him. I mean, Curtis Samuel's interesting. He's had 3 good weeks in a row. I'm just worried. I'm worried it's one of those situations where you finally start him after you see 3 good weeks, and then he puts up 5 points or something. Like again. This is the week if you are going to start him, like you probably are. He's wide receiver 26 on the year. But I don't know. I'm not super excited. So we'll talk about, we talked about Wandale versus Curtis Samuel. Who would you take there? Curtis Samuel's touchdown in 3 straight games. Gets carries. He's going to get his 4 or 5 catches.
I think I'm starting Curtis Samuel there. God, this is terrible.
Yeah. I guess it's 2 straight games 3 straight games. Yeah. I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh man, it's crazy about Dotson too. Like, we all had such high expectations for him, and that was kind of our fault, I guess. Like, as far as like expecting it, like, well, I mean, I think like the injury to McLaurin in the preseason, and like it was kind of like, oh, it's all there. Like we saw flashes of him as a rookie, but he was still very touchdown dependent there. And I mean, and that's the only even startable game he's had this year is when he had the touchdown. So I'm not saying he's a bad player and stuff, but it's just, I don't know. It's just crazy that he's out there so much and he's not getting the ball.
Yeah, I think he was a little bit more than just like a touchdown dependent guy. Last year, his last 5 games, like he was on a 1,200 yard receiving pace, only 3 touchdowns in that stretch. He was on pace for, I think, like a 70, 75 catch season. You know what I mean? Like, he was a first round pick. Like, everything kind of lined up there where it's like, all right, first round pick, looked good his rookie year. He's stepping into, we think, a better situation with the offensive coordinator. And yeah, it just all went to shit, So
Yeah.
I don't think we necessarily made a mistake. Like, we weren't taking them like, round 4. Like Christian Watson, I think, was a mistake. You know what I mean? Like, in terms of the difference in where they were drafted, I don't remember exactly where, but I feel like Christian Watson was going like 4th round or 5th round or something. Whereas like Dotson was more like 7th or maybe he snuck into the 6th after the McLaurin injury.
I don't know. I feel like he jumped up a couple of rounds pretty quick there with the Terry McLaurin injury and everything like that, because that was right before drafts.
Well, it was a little more than, it was also the preseason, which again, maybe we shouldn't be paying attention to the preseason very much as well. Like, he was really being used in the preseason, looked awesome in the preseason,
Yeah.
I'm just kind of quickly, I was trying to see where he was, those guys were being taken, but I don't know. Like, I feel like, I don't think we overreacted too much. Like, second-year wide receivers, they generally break out. So, but yeah, back to Samuel. I mean, Logan Thomas, like, if you still have him, again, like, how I look at tight ends is when you're streaming these tight ends, you're going to get games like you had with Logan Thomas last week, where it's a bust game after having like 8 targets. But if you drop him and chase the other streamer who had a good game, and he's gonna butt, like, you're gonna be put into a cycle where like you're almost constantly chasing, Whereas like where you're in for a tight end. Again, the ebbs and the flows, like, just kind of take the good with the bad, basically. Like,
I know it drives me absolutely crazy every year, and when I talk myself into taking a tight end like earlier, that drives me crazy too, because it's like, oh, why is Mark Andrews hurt last year? Like, how could he? He did it to me.
Yeah. I mean, look at the top. It happens every year. Like, look at the top 5 tight ends, and you have Cole Kmet and Laporta in there. Like, no one expected those two. Like, you always get 2 or 3 in the top, 6 or 7 that no one expected. So you just hope you hit on that. And, so, but yeah, I think we're going to finish up there. Unless we missed something. No, I think we got everything with this game. So, we'll be back looking at 4 more and talking about who this terrible week that's maybe upon us. Maybe it'll be a good week. I don't know. Maybe it will be. I know you were camping, and I don't know how much you watched, but yeah, it was pretty rough to watch last week. Of just, you're doing bad if you have sleeper and you're just like not getting any updates or anything about like, oh, your player did this, your player did this. Like, you kind of know
it's
if you have a good or bad week.
It's always worrisome.
Yeah.
We definitely had the games on while we were out there, but we were not actively watching them, except for that Giants Bills game, which actually turned out pretty exciting towards the end. But
yeah, indeed it did. But yeah, we'll finish up there, and as always, like and subscribe, and we'll catch you guys next time.